The prison gates groaned as they slid open, metal grinding against metal, a sound that carried a strange finality. Ryan Carter stepped out, his figure leaner than before, shoulders squared as if the weight of 7 years still clung to him. The autumn wind cut across his face, but he didn't flinch. He had learned not to flinch at anything. Laura stood near the faded white lines of the visitor parking lot, arms folded tight against her chest, as though hugging herself for strength. She spotted him and tried to smile, but the curve of her lips wavered. He walked toward her, measured steps echoing, eyes trained forward yet unreadable. When they reached each other, Ryan opened his arms. Laura leaned in, but it wasn't the embrace of a husband and wife reunited. It was stiff, cautious, like two strangers rehearsing a forgotten dance. She pulled back first, searching his face for warmth. All she found were eyes hardened by time and silence. "I kept my promise," Laura whispered, voice barely carried by the wind. "I waited." Ryan gave a curt nod. "I knew you would." Those words might have once sounded tender, but now they came flat, without affection. Laura swallowed, forcing brightness. "Let's go home." The ride was quiet, punctuated only by the hum of the tires and the occasional clatter of loose gravel. Ryan stared out the window as the world rolled past. Shops that had changed names, streets repaved, strangers wearing fashions he didn't recognize. Laura kept glancing at him, trying to reconcile the man beside her with the one she had married. His jawline was sharper, his hair cropped shorter, but it wasn't the physical changes that unsettled her. It was the stillness, a calm too controlled, as if everything inside him had been locked away. At a red light, she dared to break the silence. "I made your favorite dinner, chicken casserole just the way you liked." Ryan's eyes flicked to hers for a second before drifting back to the glass. "Haven't thought about casserole in years." Something in his tone carried distance, like a man speaking of a childhood memory long buried. Laura's grip tightened on the steering wheel. When they pulled into the driveway, Laura expected relief, a sense of homecoming. But Ryan paused before stepping out, staring at the house as though it were foreign soil. He eventually moved, dragging his duffel bag behind him, shoulders tense. Inside, the house felt smaller, suffocating even. He trailed his fingers along the walls, touching photos, trinkets, frames that bore no memory for him. Laura tried to bridge the space between them. "We'll be okay, Ryan. It just takes time." He turned, eyes dark. "Time's all I had. It didn't change much." Her breath caught, the heaviness of his words sinking into her chest. She wanted to reach for him, to pull him back into the life they once had, but something invisible held her hand in place. That night, as the house settled into silence, Laura lay awake beside him. Ryan's body was rigid, turned toward the ceiling, eyes open in the dark. She could feel the distance between them stretch wider than the 7 years he had been gone. And as dawn approached, Laura wondered if the man who returned was truly her husband, or a stranger she had promised to love. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, but warmth never touched the room. Ryan sat at the edge of the bed, lacing his shoes with mechanical precision. Laura stirred, watching him quietly. She remembered mornings when he used to kiss her shoulder before leaving for work, when laughter filled the small house. Now every movement felt rehearsed, as if he had been taught to live all over again. "Coffee's ready downstairs," she offered, her voice gentle. He only nodded, already standing, already moving toward the door. At the kitchen table, Ryan ate in silence. The scrape of his fork against the plate was the loudest sound in the room. Laura tried to fill the void. "You used to love sitting here with the newspaper. I kept the habit for you. They still deliver it every morning." Ryan lifted his gaze briefly, then returned to his food. "Paper doesn't matter. News gets old in a day." Laura's smile faltered. His words were blunt, not cruel, but they carved distance. She sipped her coffee, heart pounding in the silence. Later, when he stepped outside, Laura lingered by the window. Ryan stood on the porch, staring down the street, shoulders tight. It wasn't just the world that felt unfamiliar. It was as though he didn't know where to put himself anymore. By afternoon, the tension thickened. Ryan paced the living room while Laura folded laundry on the couch. His eyes caught the photographs lining the mantel. Their wedding day, vacations, birthdays. His jaw twitched. "You never changed them," he said finally. Laura set the folded towel aside. "I wanted you to feel like you were still part of this home." His laugh was short, sharp. 7 years, Laura. 7 years of the same pictures. Doesn't feel like home. Feels like a museum." She swallowed hard, the sting of his words pressing against her chest. "I didn't want you to think I moved on without you." Ryan's eyes softened for a moment, but then the hardness returned. "Maybe you should have." Her throat tightened, but she said nothing. The distance between them felt like a wall no touch could break through. That night, Laura tried to bridge it again. She placed a hand on his arm as they lay in bed. "I'm glad you're here, Ryan. We'll figure this out." He turned his head, his gaze heavy with something unspoken. "You don't know what you're saying." She pulled back slowly, her fingers tingling from the rejection. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock on the dresser. Laura stared into the dark, thoughts circling. She wanted to believe in the man she once married, but every moment seemed to prove that man was gone. Ryan closed his eyes, jaw tight, as if bracing against something only he could feel. And as Laura drifted into uneasy sleep, she sensed that what stood between them wasn't time at all. It was something hidden, waiting to be revealed. The second night came heavy with silence. Rain pattered softly against the windows, a steady rhythm that filled the emptiness between them. Laura sat at the vanity, brushing her hair in slow, deliberate strokes, while Ryan sat on the edge of the bed staring at his hands as if they were foreign. She forced a smile. "It's been so long, Ryan. Maybe tonight we can start again." Her voice trembled slightly, but hope flickered in her eyes. Ryan looked at her, something unreadable crossing his face. He rose, walking toward her, his footsteps measured, deliberate. Laura set the brush down, her breath shallow. When his hand touched her shoulder, it was firm, too firm. As if he didn't remember the gentleness she once knew, she turned to face him, searching for the man she had waited 7 years for. Their lips met, but the kiss was strained, awkward, like pressing together two lives that no longer fit. Laura tried to ignore the unease, tried to lean into the moment, but a chill crept up her spine. His touch carried weight, but lacked warmth, like a command rather than an embrace. Ryan whispered, "I've missed this." Laura swallowed. "So have I." But the words were brittle, fragile. When his hand slid lower, she stiffened. Something felt wrong, not only the years between them, not only the scars etched into his skin, but something deeper, unsettling, that made her pulse race with fear instead of desire. She pulled back suddenly, eyes wide. "Ryan, maybe we should wait. It's late." His expression darkened, shadows carving across his face in the dim light. "Wait? I've been waiting 7 years, Laura." Her throat tightened. Things feel different. We need time." Ryan's jaw clenched, his body rigid. For a moment Laura thought he might explode, but instead he exhaled slowly, turning away. He sat back on the bed, shoulders hunched, silence wrapping around him like chains. Laura stood frozen by the vanity, heart pounding, unsure whether to reach for him or retreat. The rain outside grew heavier, echoing her own rising fear. She had imagined this reunion so many times, but the reality felt like a stranger pressing against her life. She finally whispered, "I'm sorry." Ryan didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor, his breathing shallow and uneven. When they finally lay down, a gulf of space separated them. Laura turned to her side, staring into the darkness, unable to calm her racing thoughts. She could feel Ryan's presence beside her, tense, awake, as if he too was lost in battles she could never see. Minutes dragged into hours. Laura's eyelids grew heavy, but unease clung to her chest. She wondered if love could survive prison walls, or if those walls had followed him home. And as she drifted into restless sleep, she couldn't shake the thought that Ryan's silence wasn't just distance, it was a secret waiting to surface. Laura woke to the creak of floorboards and the faint sound of the front door clicking shut. She sat up, heart pounding. Ryan wasn't beside her. The clock on the nightstand read 3:07. For a moment she debated going after him, but the silence that followed felt heavier than any answer she might find. By morning, Ryan was back, sitting at the kitchen table with an untouched cup of coffee. His eyes were red, but his expression gave nothing away. Laura asked no questions, afraid of what answers might come. Later that day, she picked up her phone, fingers trembling as she dialed a number she hadn't called in weeks. Amanda's voice answered, warm but wary. "You sound tired," Amanda said. "I am," Laura whispered. "He's different." "Different? How?" Laura hesitated. "Like he's still locked up. He barely speaks. Last night I tried to, but something was wrong. He was wrong. I pulled away, and the look he gave me," her throat closed. "Amanda, I don't know this man anymore." There was a pause on the line. Then Amanda sighed. "Laura, 7 years changes anyone. You knew this wouldn't be easy." "I thought I did," Laura said, voice cracking. "But it's more than distance. It's like there's something he's not telling me." Amanda lowered her tone, almost conspiratorial. "Then maybe don't push him. If prison made him cold, pressing for answers could make it worse. Just keep yourself safe." The word safe lodged in Laura's chest. She hadn't considered danger, only sorrow. Yet as Amanda spoke, a chill slid through her. That evening, Ryan sat in the living room, flipping through channels without stopping on any. Laura stood in the hallway, watching him, debating whether to bridge the silence. Instead, she turned away, retreating into the bedroom. She pulled out the shoebox where she kept his old letters, some stained with prison ink, others left unanswered. She read them now, noticing details she had ignored before: abrupt phrases, odd slips in tone, sudden stretches of silence between letters. Had he written them in haste? Or had someone else's hand hovered over the page, dictating what he could and couldn't say? Her thoughts spiraled. She remembered the rumors whispered during church gatherings, neighbors lowering their voices when she passed. Prison changes men, they had said. Sometimes it breaks them in ways they never speak of. When Ryan finally came to bed, Laura pretended to sleep. His footsteps were heavy, deliberate. He slid under the covers, body stiff as stone. She kept her breathing steady, though her heart raced, a rhythm of fear in her chest. Hours later, Laura sat alone in the bathroom, the faint hum of the house surrounding her. She whispered into her phone again, Amanda listening on the other end. "He's hiding something," Laura said, voice trembling. "And I'm afraid of what it is." Amanda's silence spoke louder than words. Laura pressed her palm against her reflection in the mirror, her face pale, eyes hollow. For the first time, she realized her fear wasn't of losing Ryan. It was of discovering what prison had left behind in him. The following days moved like shadows across the walls. Ryan's presence filled the house, yet he seemed absent, drifting through rooms as if they belonged to someone else. Laura tried to carry on with normal routines, grocery runs, phone calls, quick visits with Amanda, but beneath the surface her mind churned. One afternoon she stopped by the corner store. The clerk, an older woman named Denise, greeted her with the kind of smile that held too many secrets. "Haven't seen Ryan around in a while," Denise said casually, scanning Laura's items. "Bet it's an adjustment, having him home." Laura forced a polite laugh. "It is. We're just taking things day by day." Denise leaned closer, lowering her voice. "People talk, about what he went through in there." Laura stiffened. "What do you mean?" The clerk's eyes flickered, enjoying the pull of gossip. "Prison can do things to a man, break him down, make him do whatever it takes to survive. Folks say he wasn't the same kind of man when he left as when he went in." Heat rushed to Laura's face. She grabbed her bag quickly, muttering a thank you before leaving. Outside, the air felt too thin, too sharp. The words clung to her, unshakable. That evening, Amanda stopped by with takeout. As they ate, Laura relayed Denise's words. Amanda frowned. "People love to exaggerate. You can't take every whisper as truth." "But what if it's not exaggeration?" Laura's voice cracked. "Amanda, last night I tried again." He turned away like it was shame, not rejection. "Something's wrong. Something he won't say." Amanda reached for her hand. "Even if that's true, do you want to know? Some truths don't bring peace. they destroy it. The question lodged in Laura's chest. She wanted to believe in Ryan, in the man she had loved before prison swallowed him, but the whispers, his silence, and her own unease were stitching together a picture she didn't want to see. Later that night, Laura sat alone in the living room, while Ryan smoked on the porch. Through the window, she watched his face illuminated by the lighter's flame. He stared into the distance, lips pressed tight, eyes hollow. A neighbor passing by gave Laura a look, half pity, half warning before hurrying away. It was the same look others had given her all week, as though she was the last to know a story everyone else had already read. When Ryan came back inside, Laura quickly busied herself with the dishes. She didn't want him to see the fear in her eyes. "Everything okay?" he asked, his tone low, unreadable. She forced a smile. Of course, but inside her heart screamed with questions. The whispers had planted a seed, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't stop it from growing. And by the next night, that seed would bear fruit in a way she could no longer deny. The storm outside rattled the windows, as if the house itself could sense the tension inside. Laura sat curled on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, while Ryan lingered by the window, cigarette smoke curling in the air. Neither had spoken for nearly an hour. When he finally turned, his gaze fixed on her, with an intensity that made her chest tighten. "We can't keep living like ghosts," he said. "We're married." Laura nodded slowly, heart racing. She wanted to believe him, wanted to bridge the silence. But when he reached for her hand, his grip was rough, desperate. He led her to the bedroom, his movements determined, almost rehearsed. The room felt colder than before. Ryan leaned close, his breath uneven, his lips brushing her neck. Laura tried to steady herself, to quiet the unease gnawing at her. But when her hands brushed over him, she froze. Her body went rigid. What she felt wasn't what she remembered, not what she had waited for all these years. Panic surged through her veins. "Ryan," she whispered, pulling back slightly. His jaw clenched. "Don't stop." Tears welled in her eyes. "Something's wrong. Please, just talk to me." Ryan's face hardened, his hand gripping her arm. "You don't understand what I had to do. What they did to me." Laura's breath caught. The words echoed like a confession and a warning at once. She searched his eyes, but they were clouded, darkened by something beyond her reach. He released her suddenly, stepping back, pacing the room like a caged animal. 7 years, he said, voice rising. 7 years of surviving. You think I came out whole? Laura clutched the sheets around her, trembling. "You should have told me," she whispered. Ryan stopped, turning sharply. "Told you? What would that change? Would you still look at me like a man? Or would you see me as what they made me?" His words carved through her, sharp and merciless. She pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to contain the sobs threatening to escape. The truth she had feared was now undeniable. Prison had taken more than his freedom. It had taken his sense of himself, reshaped him in ways she could never undo. Ryan's shoulders slumped, the anger draining into something hollow. He sat heavily on the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. "I just wanted to come home," he whispered. "But there's no home left for me." Laura watched him, torn between pity and terror. The man she had once loved sat before her, broken, but the fractures ran so deep she wasn't sure there was anything left to mend. She rose slowly, wrapping her robe tight around her. "I can't do this, Ryan. Not like this." He lifted his head, eyes blazing with a mixture of hurt and fury. "So that's it? You waited all these years just to leave?" Her throat closed, words failing her. She turned toward the door, needing distance, needing air. Behind her, Ryan's voice cracked the silence. "If you walk away now, Laura, you'll regret it." She froze, heart pounding, but didn't look back. The storm roared loud outside, as if echoing the fracture that had finally split their marriage wide open. The courthouse steps felt colder than the storm that had battered her house 2 nights before. Laura clutched the folder in her hands, divorce papers inside, the weight of them pressing harder than the stone beneath her feet. 2 days. That was all it had taken. 2 days of living with a stranger who wore her husband's face. Inside, the clerk's voice was calm, almost detached, as Laura signed the documents. Her hand trembled with every stroke of the pen. The sound of her name being written felt final, like carving her own heart out. When she stepped back into the daylight, a gust of wind caught her hair, lifting it across her face. She didn't feel free. She felt exposed. Ryan was waiting. He leaned against her car, arms crossed, eyes sharp as glass. Laura froze mid-step, blood draining from her cheeks. He straightened slowly, pushing off the hood with deliberate calm. "So it's true," he said. His voice carried no question, only venom. Laura tried to steady her breath. "Ryan, please." "Please?" His laugh was hollow. 2 days, Laura. 2 days and you throw away 7 years? Her throat tightened. 7 years already threw us away. You're not the man I married. Ryan's jaw clenched, the muscle twitching as his fists tightened at his sides. You waited for me. You told me you would. And the second you see what they did to me, you run. Tears blurred her vision, but her voice came steady. Because you won't let me in. Because you won't admit what happened. You keep shutting me out, and I can't live inside that silence anymore. His eyes flickered, a flash of pain beneath the fury. For a heartbeat, he almost looked broken. But then the hardness returned, and his voice dropped to a low growl. You think anyone else will take you? After this? After me? Laura shook her head, unlocking the car with trembling fingers. This isn't about anyone else. It's about me surviving this marriage. He stepped closer, blocking her path. You think divorce papers change anything? You're still mine. Her chest constricted. She glanced around the lot, but no one lingered nearby. Summoning every ounce of strength, she lifted her chin. No, Ryan, I stopped being yours the moment prison stole you from yourself. The words struck him like a blow. His face contorted, rage and grief warring for dominance. For a moment, she thought he might hit her, but instead he slammed his hand against the car door, metal groaning under his palm. Laura flinched, but held her ground. Go on, then he spat. Run back to your safe little life. But remember, everything you think you know about me is only the beginning. He stepped back, letting her pass. Laura slid into the car, slamming the lock down before he could change his mind. Through the glass, his silhouette loomed, staring with eyes that promised this wasn't the end. As she drove away, her hands shook violently on the wheel. The divorce was real, but the danger was only just beginning. The night after the courthouse confrontation, Laura sat alone in Amanda's living room. A blanket covered her knees, but no warmth reached her. Amanda moved quietly in the kitchen, making tea, but Laura's thoughts were too loud to hear anything else. Every word Ryan had hurled at her still rang in her ears. When her phone buzzed, she nearly dropped it. The screen glowed with his name. Against every instinct, she answered. Laura, Ryan's voice rasped, low and ragged. We need to talk. She closed her eyes. There's nothing left to say. Yes, there is, he insisted. You think you know why I'm broken, why you can't touch me, why you keep pulling away. But you don't. You've only seen the surface. Her throat tightened. Then tell me. For once, tell me the truth. Silence stretched across the line, heavy, suffocating. Then Ryan exhaled sharply, words spilling like a wound torn open. They owned me in there, Laura. Do you understand? They made sure I knew I wasn't a man anymore. Every day, every night I fought. Sometimes I won. Most of the time, I didn't. And when I did survive, I wasn't me anymore. I was what they left behind. Laura's stomach turned. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears stinging her eyes. The voice on the other end wasn't the Ryan she remembered. It was raw, splintered, desperate. I thought if I just got home I could forget, Ryan continued, that you'd still see me, still want me. But when you looked away that night, I saw it in your eyes. You saw what they did to me, and you recoiled. Laura's chest heaved. Ryan, I wasn't recoiling from you. I was scared of how much you were hurting. His laugh was bitter, empty. Don't lie. You can't even stand to touch me. 7 years, Laura. 7 years of being less than a man. And now you want to erase me with papers. She clutched the phone tighter. I never wanted to erase you. I wanted the man I loved back. But you won't let me in. You won't let me help." There was a long pause, then his voice dropped, quiet and unsteady. "Because if you knew everything, you'd never look at me again." Laura's tears spilled freely now. She wanted to reach through the line to bridge the abyss between them, but the walls he had built were too high. "Ryan," she whispered, "I can't fix what they did to you, and you can't punish me for it." The silence that followed felt endless. Finally he said, "If you walk away now, I'll have nothing left, nothing but the rage." Her hand shook as she ended the call. The weight of his confession lingered like smoke, filling every corner of the room. She leaned back into the couch, trembling, Amanda's worried eyes watching her from the doorway. Laura knew then that Ryan's truth wasn't just broken, it was dangerous. And danger had a way of following you, no matter how far you tried to run. Ryan's confession should have brought release, but instead it lit a fuse. In the days that followed, Laura felt his presence everywhere. His car idled near her street at odd hours, headlights flickering in the dark. Her phone buzzed with missed calls, voicemails filled with his ragged breathing or muttered demands. At first she tried ignoring him. She let Amanda's voice soothe her, telling her to stay strong, that distance would break his grip. But the more Laura pulled away, the harder Ryan clung. One evening she returned home to find the porch light shattered. On the step lay a single folded photograph, one of their wedding pictures. Across their smiling faces, Ryan had scrawled in heavy ink, "You promised." Her hands shook as she showed Amanda later. "This isn't love anymore. It's something darker." Amanda's face was grave. "He's unraveling. You need to call the police." Laura shook her head. "And tell them what?" "That my ex-husband leaves me notes and sits in his car outside. They'll laugh me out of the station until it's too late." Meanwhile, Ryan's spiral deepened. At night he stalked the streets, replaying her rejection in his mind like a broken record. He smashed his fists against brick walls until his knuckles bled, whispering her name as if the sound alone could anchor him. "She thinks she can erase me," he muttered into the darkness. "She doesn't know I'm already inside her life." The obsession fed on itself, warping into rage. He pictured her laughing with Amanda, imagined other men sitting at her table touching what was his. The images burned into him until his chest felt like fire. One night, Laura's phone buzzed again. Against her better judgment, she listened to the voicemail. Ryan's voice was low, trembling with fury. "You can file papers. You can hide at your sister's. But you're still mine, Laura. You'll always be mine. And if I can't have you, no one will." Her knees gave way, and she sank to the floor, the phone slipping from her hand. The threat wasn't veiled anymore. It was clear, dangerous, final. Amanda rushed in, pulling Laura into her arms. "We're calling the police. Tonight." But even as Amanda dialed, Laura knew the warning would do little. She could already see Ryan's face in her mind, the way his eyes burned when he spoke of rage being all he had left. Somewhere out there he was waiting, watching, and his patience was running out. Amanda's house had become Laura's refuge, though even there she never felt safe. Every night she double-checked the locks and drew the curtains tight, her heart pounding at the smallest creak. Amanda tried to comfort her, but Laura's nerves were stretched to breaking. On the third night, headlights swept across the living room wall. Laura froze, clutching the blanket around her. Amanda moved toward the window and peered out, her face drained of color. "It's him," Amanda whispered. Ryan's car idled across the street, its engine growling like a threat. Laura's breath came shallow, her pulse hammering in her ears. Amanda grabbed her phone. "I'm calling the police." "No," Laura whispered sharply. "That will only make him angrier." Before Amanda could argue, there was a heavy knock on the door. The sound reverberated through the walls, sharp and demanding. Laura's body locked in place. "Laura," Ryan's voice thundered from outside. "Open the door, we need to talk." Amanda shook her head furiously, mouthing, "Don't." But Laura's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't ignore him forever. The pounding grew harder, rattling the door on its hinges. Amanda whispered urgently, "If you open it, he won't leave. He's not here to talk, he's here to control you." Another crash shook the door, followed by Ryan's growl. "You think hiding here will save you? You think your sister can keep me away?" Laura's body trembled. Amanda, shaking herself, hit call on her phone. "Yes, police. We need help immediately. My sister's ex-husband is trying to break in." Ryan must have heard her, because his voice shifted to a furious snarl. "So that's how it is. You bring them into this." The sound of his fists slamming against the wood sent Laura stumbling backward, her knees buckling. Amanda wrapped an arm around her, dragging her toward the back of the house. Red and blue lights finally slashed across the street minutes later, but it felt like hours. The moment Ryan saw them, he retreated to his car, slamming the door so hard the sound cracked through the night. He revved the engine, tires squealing, as he lurched forward, only to be blocked by a police cruiser sliding into place. 2 officers stepped out, shouting commands. Ryan gripped the steering wheel, his face a storm of rage and desperation. For a moment, Laura thought he would plow through them, but finally he cut the engine. The officers pulled him out, hands on his back, pressing him against the hood. Laura watched from the window, her chest heaving. He looked up, eyes locking on hers across the distance. Even as the cuffs clicked around his wrists, his stare promised that this wasn't over. One officer approached the house, assuring Amanda and Laura that Ryan would be taken in, that charges could be filed. Laura nodded, but her hands still shook violently. As the cruiser pulled away, carrying Ryan into the night, Laura sank onto the couch, tears breaking loose at last. She wasn't sure what scared her more, the fact that he was gone, or the certainty that he would come back. The cell was small, no larger than a walk-in closet, its walls sweating with damp. Ryan sat on the edge of the thin mattress, staring at the cracks in the concrete. Every sound in the prison carried chains clinking, boots dragging, the low murmur of threats. Nights never brought rest. Nights brought predators. He remembered his first week. The smell of bleach and sweat filled the corridors. Guards barked orders, but their eyes slid past the violence like it wasn't there. Ryan had walked into the yard head high, shoulders squared, trying to look untouchable. But he was young, strong and new, fresh prey. They circled him slowly, men with tattoos crawling up their necks, eyes glinting with hunger for dominance. "You'll learn the rules," one of them had said, voice low, hand gripping Ryan's shoulder like a claim. That night the rules were carved into him. He fought, teeth bared, fists slamming into faces, but numbers overwhelmed strength. He remembered the cold floor against his cheek, the weight of bodies pressing down, the sound of his own breath strangled into silence. He never forgot the laughter. Afterward he sat in the shower for hours, water scalding his skin, but nothing washed away the shame. His fists bled from punching tile until his knuckles split. He told himself he'd never let it happen again. But prison had a way of breaking promises. Over the years he adapted. He made himself harder, colder. He struck first when challenged, tore into anyone who tested him, learned to carry an aura of violence like armor. But behind the mask he rotted. Every night the flashbacks returned, the weight, the pain, the stripping of his identity. He stopped writing Laura after the first 2 years. What could he say? That her husband was no longer a man, but a shadow molded by cruelty. When he did write, the words were hollow, sentences half-finished. She had noticed. He knew she had. The guards weren't saviors. Sometimes they looked away, sometimes they joined the mockery. Ryan learned that survival wasn't about trust, it was about endurance. One winter night he made a choice. He aligned himself with a group, trading pieces of himself for protection. It worked for a while, until loyalty demanded more than fists. Ryan remembered standing in the corner of a cell, watching another man beaten, forced to join in or become the next victim. His stomach turned as he raised his fists, feeling the last shred of his humanity peel away. When release finally came, freedom didn't feel like freedom. It felt like exile. The gates opened, but he carried the walls inside him. Sitting now in a holding cell after the confrontation at Amanda's house, Ryan pressed his back against the cold concrete, eyes closed. The flashbacks returned with brutal clarity. He saw Laura's face when she recoiled, saw the pity in her eyes when he confessed. His fists curled tight. He whispered to himself, They took everything, but she was supposed to be mine. The guard's footsteps echoed down the hall, keys jangling. Ryan lifted his head slowly. The past hadn't stayed behind bars. It had followed him, and it demanded an answer. Ryan's release from the holding cell came faster than Laura expected. The officers had only booked him on disorderly conduct, issuing a warning that felt more like a slap on the wrist. By the time Laura learned he was out, Ryan was already spiraling. He found refuge in a dimly lit bar at the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Whiskey burned down his throat, glass after glass, until the pain inside dulled just enough to breathe. Around him laughter echoed, but it sounded foreign, jagged. "Another?" he muttered, shoving the empty glass forward. The bartender hesitated, eyes narrowing at Ryan's trembling hands. "You sure, man? You look like you've had enough." Ryan's glare silenced him. The glass refilled. Back at Amanda's house, Laura paced the living room. Her phone buzzed with messages, some slurred, some chillingly clear. "You think I'm weak? You'll see what I am. Don't hide from me. I know where you are." Amanda begged her to block the number, but Laura shook her head. "If I block him, I won't know what he's planning. I need to know." Meanwhile, Ryan's nights stretched longer, his mind twisting tighter. He smashed bottles against alley walls, shouting Laura's name into the dark. His knuckles were raw, his lips cracked from muttering to himself. "She was supposed to save me," he hissed, pacing the narrow apartment he'd rented with what little money he'd left. Clothes lay scattered, drawers yanked open, holes punched in plaster. The silence between his outbursts grew dangerous, filled with fantasies of reclaiming what he believed was his. When he did sleep, dreams dragged him back to the prison yard. The laughter, the weight, the shame. He'd jolt awake, sweat soaking the sheets, grabbing for a weapon that wasn't there. Then his thoughts swung back to Laura. Her face became both comfort and torment. The one thing that tied him to life and the one thing fueling his rage. At Amanda's, Laura confided in her sister late one night. "He's unraveling. I can feel it. It's not just anger. It's obsession. And I don't know how far he'll go." Amanda squeezed her hand. "You need to file a restraining order." Laura shook her head. "Paper won't stop him. Nothing will, not until he decides he's finished with me." Her voice broke, and Amanda held her close, but neither could shake the sense that time was running out. Back in his apartment, Ryan sat on the floor, surrounded by broken glass. He rocked slightly, whispering fragments of memories, Laura's laughter on their wedding day, the feel of her hand on his chest, the sound of her voice promising she'd wait. Those memories curdled into images of her walking away, signing papers, erasing him. His eyes hardened. "If she won't come back," he muttered, "I'll make her listen." The spiral had no bottom, and with every drink, every whisper, Ryan edged closer to the moment where obsession would become something irreversible. Laura tried to reclaim pieces of her life, small fragments of normalcy. She returned to work at the library, shelving books with shaking hands, forcing smiles at patrons who had heard the rumors but said nothing. Amanda insisted on picking her up each evening, refusing to let her walk alone. For a time, Ryan stayed out of sight. But absence didn't bring peace. It only made her dread his return more. The confrontation came on a grey afternoon. Laura stepped out of the library, rain misting lightly, when she saw him leaning against her car. His clothes were rumpled, eyes bloodshot, but his stance was steady, determined. Her breath caught. She turned back toward the door, but he called out, voice sharp enough to slice through the air. "Laura, don't run." Pedestrians glanced over, sensing the tension but hurrying past, unwilling to intervene. Laura froze, clutching her bag to her chest. Ryan stepped forward slowly, hands out as though approaching a frightened animal. "I don't want to hurt you. I just want you to listen." Her voice shook. "You need to leave me alone." "I can't," he said, desperation cracking through his tone. "You're all I have left. Without you, I'm nothing." Laura's eyes darted toward the street, hoping to spot Amanda's car. "You don't own me, Ryan. Not anymore." Something flickered across his face. Pain, then fury. "Don't say that. Don't you dare." He lowered his voice, leaning closer. "You think papers can end us? You think the world cares about your signature? I survived hell for 7 years, Laura. You don't get to erase me. Her throat tightened, tears threatening. I didn't erase you. Prison did. And now you're letting it take me too. His jaw worked furiously. For a moment he looked as though he might crumble right there, collapse into the broken man beneath the rage. But then his eyes darkened, his voice dropping to a chilling whisper. If you walk away now, I swear, I'll make sure you regret it. The words rooted her to the pavement. She felt the weight of them settle into her bones, heavier than chains. Just then, Amanda's car pulled up, horn blaring. Ryan stepped back, face twisting as Amanda leaned out the window, shouting, "Get in, now!" Laura bolted, fumbling with the handle before diving inside. Ryan slammed his fist against the hood, eyes blazing as Amanda sped away. His figure shrank in the rearview mirror, but his presence lingered, carved into Laura's chest. In the passenger seat, Laura trembled, tears spilling freely. "He's not going to stop," she whispered. Amanda gripped the wheel tighter, her face pale. "Then we'll have to be ready when he comes." Behind them, Ryan watched the car disappear into the rain, his lips curling into a grim smile. The ultimatum had been given. The next move would be his. Rain lashed the windows that night. As Laura sat in Amanda's guest room staring at the ceiling, sleep refused to come. Ryan's words echoed in her head, a threat woven into her every thought. Amanda had dozed off in the next room, but Laura lay rigid, listening to every creak of the house. Then, silence broke. A faint scrape at the back door. Her breath hitched. She slipped from the bed, feet bare against the hardwood, moving cautiously to the hallway. The noise came again, metal against wood, a lock straining under pressure. "Please God," she whispered, heart pounding. The lock gave way with a soft crack. The door creaked open, letting in a draft of cold rain. A shadow filled the kitchen doorway. Ryan, his clothes clung to him, soaked through, his face pale with fury and despair. "Laura," he whispered hoarsely, stepping inside. "We need to end this." Laura's scream caught in her throat. Amanda stumbled out of her room, eyes wide, clutching her phone. "Get out, Ryan. I'm calling the police." Ryan's gaze flicked to her, voice rising. "Don't interfere, Amanda. This is between me and my wife." Laura backed away, her trembling hands searching blindly for anything to defend herself. She grabbed a lamp from the side table, holding it like a weapon. "Stay away," she warned, tears streaming down her face. Ryan stepped closer, rain dripping onto the floor. "You don't understand. I can't let you leave me. You're the only thing keeping me alive." Her voice broke. "You're destroying me, Ryan. This isn't love, it's violence." His chest heaved, torn between rage and sorrow. He reached for her, and Laura swung the lamp wildly. It smashed against his shoulder, sending him staggering back with a roar. Amanda shouted into the phone, "He's here! He broke in! Hurry!" The sound of sirens faintly wailed in the distance, growing closer. Ryan's face twisted, realizing time was running out. "Laura," he growled, eyes locking on hers. "If I can't have you, no one will." He lunged, tackling her to the floor. Laura screamed, thrashing, nails clawing at his arms. The smell of wet fabric and sweat suffocated her. Amanda hurled a chair, shouting desperately, trying to pull him off. Laura's hands found a shard of broken lamp glass. She slashed it upward, grazing his arm. Ryan howled, loosening his grip, just long enough for her to scramble free. She stumbled toward the front door as red and blue lights spilled across the curtains. Officers burst inside seconds later, weapons drawn. Ryan froze, chest heaving, blood streaking his sleeve. For a heartbeat, silence filled the house. "Hands where we can see them," an officer barked. Ryan raised his arms slowly, his gaze never leaving Laura's. His eyes burned with betrayal and longing all at once, a look that seared into her soul. As the cuffs closed around his wrists, Laura collapsed into Amanda's arms, shaking uncontrollably. Ryan was finally restrained, but the damage was done. The breaking point had arrived, and now justice, or something like it, would follow. The police cruiser's lights painted the street in relentless flashes of red and blue. Neighbors clustered at their windows, some whispering, others simply staring as Ryan was shoved into the back seat, his wrists bound in steel. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead, but his eyes never left Laura. Even as the car door slammed, his gaze clung to her, a wordless accusation, a plea, a curse all at once. Inside Amanda's living room, Laura sat wrapped in a blanket, trembling. Her hands were raw where the lamp shard had cut her, her body bruised from the struggle. An officer crouched in front of her, notebook open, voice steady but gentle. "Do you want to press charges?" he asked. Laura opened her mouth, but no words came. Amanda answered for her. "Of course she does." He broke in. "Attacked her. What more do you need?" But Laura's silence lingered. She thought of Ryan's face when the handcuffs clicked shut. Not just rage. There had been grief there too. A brokenness so deep, it almost pulled her under with him. The officer studied her carefully. "Ma'am, this is serious. He's not just going to walk away from this, but your decision matters." Laura swallowed hard. Her voice was fragile. "Yes, press charges." The officer nodded, jotting notes, before leaving them to the heavy silence. Amanda knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders. "You did the right thing. You had no choice." But Laura's mind wouldn't let go of the years she had promised him, the letters she saved, the hope she clung to. Every night he was gone, she had waited. And in waiting, she had tethered herself to the man who came home, and now that tether had nearly strangled her. Hours later, she found herself at the police station, sitting across a table from a detective who slid forms toward her. Through the glass partition, she saw Ryan sitting in another room, hands cuffed to the table, his head bowed. The fluorescent light bleached him pale, every line in his face etched with exhaustion. She remembered the boyish man she married, the laugh, the warmth, the way he held her on their wedding night. And then she remembered the weight of his body pinning her to the floor, the promise that if he couldn't have her, no one would. Her pen scratched across the paper. Each signature felt like a hammer driving nails into a coffin. When she finished, she closed her eyes and let the tears fall. Back in the holding room, Ryan lifted his head, sensing her through the wall. His lips moved silently, shaping her name, but no sound came. For the first time, she looked at him not as her husband, not even as her tormentor, but as a man hollowed out by shadows he could never escape. When she left the station, the night air felt heavy with rain and consequence. Amanda guided her to the car, whispering, "It's over." But Laura knew better. Justice didn't feel like victory, it felt like ashes. And though Ryan was behind bars once more, the weight of his brokenness and her own would follow her into every dawn that came. The weeks that followed blurred into a haze of paperwork, questions, and sleepless nights. Laura found herself repeating the same phrases to detectives, lawyers, even reporters who lingered at the edge of the courthouse steps. Each time she spoke his name, it felt less like her husband's, and more like a ghost she was trying to exorcise. Amanda stayed by her side, steady as stone. But even Amanda's presence couldn't chase away the hollow ache that had lodged itself inside Laura's chest. She had lost Ryan years ago. She realized that now, not on the night he broke in, not when she signed the divorce papers, but the moment the prison doors first closed behind him. One rainy morning, Laura sat at her kitchen table, staring at a mug of untouched coffee. Across from her lay the shoebox of Ryan's letters. She opened it for the first time in weeks, pulling out a crumpled one from his third year inside. The words were short, clipped, almost detached. "I'm doing fine. Don't worry about me. Keep living." Her hands shook as she read it again. Beneath the surface she could see it now. The fractures already forming, the cracks in his spirit that time and silence had widened into canyons. She had tried to love him back to life, but some wounds refused healing. Later that day she walked through the quiet neighborhood, past familiar faces that now avoided her gaze. She felt their whispers trail behind her. That's her, the one whose husband snapped, the one who barely made it out alive. At night, dreams pulled her back to the struggle on Amanda's living room floor. The weight of Ryan's body, the desperation in his eyes. She woke gasping, drenched in sweat. reaching for air like a drowning woman. Therapy was suggested, and maybe someday she would go. But for now, she carried the weight alone. One evening, Amanda found her on the porch, staring into the twilight. "You can't keep living like this," Amanda said softly. Laura's voice was distant. "I thought love could wait out anything, but it can't. Not prison, not secrets, not the kind of pain he carried." Amanda reached for her hand. "You waited because you loved him. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." Laura nodded faintly, though her eyes never left the horizon. The truth was bitter, but clear. Sometimes love wasn't enough to save someone from themselves. A month later, Laura visited the courthouse again. Ryan had accepted a plea for breaking and entering, resisting arrest, and threats of violence. He wouldn't be free for years. She stood at the back of the courtroom, unnoticed, as he was led away in shackles. He glanced up once, as if sensing her presence. Their eyes met across the room. For a fleeting second, she saw not rage, not desperation, but the boyish man she had married, the echo of what could never be again. When she stepped back into the daylight, Laura drew a long, trembling breath. The air was sharp, the sky heavy with clouds, but for the first time in months, she felt the faintest trace of release. She whispered into the wind, not for him but for herself. "I survived." And though the shadows of Ryan's love would follow her always, Laura knew the next chapter of her life would be hers alone to write.